Welcome to the Deep Six podcast, where we make a generational impact on you and yours. What we do here is explore a 6-point model into your health, your life, and your journey while you're here. So let's dive deep and help you thrive, not just survive. Well, welcome again here to the Deep Six. I really appreciate you joining me today. Today's one of our AMA episodes, which is kind of fun but strange for me because I just read questions and give you the answers that are off the cuff, so I pull these just a little bit earlier from you, and often some of them actually are questions that I actually get even in my office while I'm actually in person in front of you and chair to chair. So this will be fun and enlightening, but again, follow us, share this with us. I know there's some content in here that you can help others with, and whether it's, next door or across the country. Again, we see patients from all over the country and actually have patients fly in often. But my point here is, even if they're just getting the knowledge and putting it into action, making it actionable to their health, they're going to have a better quality of life and do better good in the world and love each other. So here are the Deep Six. It's based on my 6-point model. And if you're new to us, why did I create this model? Well, it's a foundational pillar structure, if you will, of your health, your physiology. So whether you're talking genetics, hormonal balance, your digestive health and diet, which includes your nutrients, toxins in your body and how you detoxify, mind-body connection, and stressors, which we all have. All of us are in the current world stressed. It's always coming at us. And then if there's pain or structural issues, and I've had recently some wonderful guests that have talked to us about stress and mind-body stuff and pain and structural stuff. So all of these 6 points are so impactful to actually make an actionable in your life, not just your health, but in your life. And if you step away and always look at yourself from an objective experience, 30,000 feet, kind of a clarity break, if you will, on your life and your health, you can really, really get a really good result and really move something that's very, very powerful in your life because you can see it clearly. So, and this is actually kind of leads into my first question that actually I've been asked many times, to be honest with you. I was even asked by my young doctor, Dr. Ryan Abboud in the practice, is just kind of my daily, what's my daily, kind of routine, if you will, and my non-negotiables and kind of how I start the day. So I guess, it's not every day like this, but I'll say it's probably 85% of my days, especially, Monday through Friday, is I get up, 5:30-ish, pretty spot on. I don't snooze it. I get right up. And my first few things that I do, obviously drinking a lot of water, but I also sit down and I have a gratitude journal. And I've done this for a few years where I write down at least 3 things, sometimes 5, of gratitude. And sometimes they're as simple as little things, and sometimes they're as big as, some big concept. People in my life, even people that have harmed me, but it changed the trajectory of my life, people that I've lost, you name it. But I write these gratitude things down because I think it sets a really good intent and it brings us into focus, into goodness. And I used to, years ago, wake up with like my day, I got to do this. I got patients waiting. I got to go here, these kind of things. And it put me into an immediate autonomic stress. And it started my day very, very, very intensely. And I noticed a big shift in my mind state and my mental clarity and my focus and my energy just by doing this gratitude. So I love that. Of course, I have a little bit of coffee, not much, about a half a cup. And spend a little time with my dogs and with my wife. Obviously, we get our youngest son out the door, and then I do set my day ahead. What's in front of me. A little bit of planning, if you will. I lead that into exercise. It's a non-negotiable every morning. I include sauna exercising, so an off day where I'm not really hitting weights or hitting cardio or that kind of thing, I might hit the sauna at 100 degrees. 160 degrees for about 20 minutes. Sometimes cold plunge, depending on time and all that, just to help, your nervous system, to help these hormetic effects in your body that are, heat and cold shock proteins to help you detoxify. But those are non-negotiables. That's how I start my day. Obviously, then I go to the office and I take care of you. But those are really, really important things that are routine for me. I always, for me, but I do think that this has a huge impact in your health, so please take note, is I do try to intentionally socialize twice a week, not with my direct family. So friends, mentors, potentially, somebody that's social in business or in a coaching aspect of mine. I try to intentionally have friends and mentors a little older than me and also a few younger. I think that brings great balance into someone's health and mindset. And believe me, social community is a huge part of health. And so that's a big thing. But I think the best thing you can do out there, if you're trying to set a good intention, and 1% better every day is 90 days, think about that, you're 90% better, is set some good intention by just taking a clarity break, step away from your life and health, take a 30,000-foot view at your day-to-day and say, how can I make this better to lead to a healthier, better, more fulfilling path with purpose? Because you deserve it, but also the loved ones around you will be impacted by it. And I cannot stress that enough. So that was a question I got, but also a question I get often in my practice about, what do I do? And not that what I do is perfect or anything like that, but I do try to live very purposefully and with good intention, and keeps me centered and focused and doing positive things. This one actually comes from us a few months ago. A question that I just never got to is about what is the newest labs or the newest biomarkers that I tend to look at and track and trend. Well, off the top of my head, and I might have mentioned these in a previous podcast, is there is some really, really cool ones out there now because we never had screening for cognitive decline or Alzheimer's, dementia. And there are 2 markers now that are out there that can be run, and I believe they run through LabCorp. Could be wrong, but I think it's LabCorp, the laboratory company, and it's beta amyloid 4240 and p-tau protein 217. And these are markers that are screening you for a ratio of these proteins in your serum that could be trending and tracking that there are proteins that are accumulating in your brain and essentially putting you at risk within 5 to 10 years of a cognitive decline for Alzheimer's or dementia. Now, by no means, if these numbers are off, does it mean you have Alzheimer's or dementia. Statistically speaking, though, is if these are off, you might want to do some intervention and think about brain health and do other testing, which I can mention here. But also, depending on how you are functioning and potentially even age, should you be getting a deeper dive into screening, even potentially, PET scans of the brain that is a true diagnosis for Alzheimer's. Now, having a diagnosis of that is not critical. What is critical is having a point that you can reflect on and try to improve for your testing and for your objectivity of how your brain is working. So my point is, if we get somebody off in this, I'm going to go to our 6-point model and go, have we optimized their hormones? How is their nutrition? How do they have toxins on board that affect the brain that we know do, put us at risk for cognitive decline with aging? What is their vascular system, their vasculature? Recently, I had a podcast about nitric oxide and the benefits of improving nitric oxide in your blood and the vascular health. Well, your brain needs good vascular health. So my point here is, what could we be missing? What should we be looking at? Now, in our office, we have actually a functional EEG, which is a screening test. It's a WAVI screening test for brain speed, and P300, which are actually how your neurons fire. And we use that to assess your functionality and brain speed. So there are other things we can do to test you, but some of the first things I do if this number is off is, what can we get to move this needle in a positive direction, meaning these biomarkers? And often it is looking at our 6-point model. And some of it could be as simple as just lifestyle stuff. How much alcohol are you drinking? How much are you exercising? What is your diet like? Are you pre-diabetic or diabetic? So those are lower lying fruit that we need to really address and look in the mirror about. But that's a wonderful lab and a biomarker that you can trend and track. Off the top of my head too, I just like to mention this because I had one today, which is really interesting earlier today that I reviewed with somebody, is I love the genetic cancer screening tests. One is called Gallery and one is Ambry. I've spoke of them before, but they continue to expand their profile, what they're looking at. I came across somebody today that his sister actually passed away from colon cancer fairly young, and he did have a variant mutation in a gene that put him at a higher risk for adenocarcinoma of the colon and polyps. Now, he is diligent about colonoscopies. He had one about 3 years ago, no polyps. He was good. But this way we can do not just good, thinking of you from the long game, thinking even these systems to optimize and doing just the typical screening. But he's somebody that even his GI doctor that had done his colonoscopy said, "You're good. We'll see you in 10 years." And he goes, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not waiting 10 years." Okay. When I gave him this info and I gave him some direction, I said, "Listen, not only are we working on your gut health, but we're going to have you get a colonoscopy and screen you with Gallery screening and also with a colonoscopy every 3 years." Okay. Because of this genetic influence. So there is some great markers and testing out there now that you can do in the genetic forefront that really are not an end game. They're not a death sentence. They just give us more info to how to screen. And remember, you are basically 99% survivable, 5-year survival rates, which is a typical way of looking at somebody with cancer. Okay, 99% if you're diagnosed a carcinoma in situ or a stage 0, meaning early. Once you're beyond a stage 3, that's dropped by half. So the point here is with cancer screening, we got to screen people and look at people early and often, and that's how we do good, true prevention. So that was, I think, a great. Now there's many other biomarkers, but those are ones that just were on the top of my head. Here's another one that actually interesting. It's basically asking why, and it seems like I'm doing in my practice a lot more deeper dive and investigation into heart health and doing more CT calcium scores and angiograms, and why, or at least they've heard me speak about it more. Well, that might be true. I've kind of reflected on that a bit, actually myself, just, probably that's just personally my age and my audience, meaning I'm seeing more people, in their at least late 40s, mid 50s and on. So if they haven't had heart screening or they haven't had, that kind of talk, at least, we're exploring that more. So that's probably more because of my audience, but I also share with you, it's also because there's better technology out there. I mean, and cost. You can get a CT calcium score for heart screening for $100, and it takes about 5 minutes. And if warranted, a CT angiogram might be about $400 or $500. Now, if it's abnormal and you need a test where they look at flow rates, that can be added price. But we have technology now to really, really, really know the severity of coronary artery disease. And it can, you also, if I think from experience, and this is from wisdom, experience, and literally 40, 50,000 patients in my career, is you cannot predict, especially in men, coronary artery disease by the way they look, the way they talk, and by the way somebody's general chemistries, meaning their cholesterol, their blood sugar, and all that. Coronary artery disease is very, very, very common. We get it from teenage years on, men earlier than women. And it's not if we're going to die, from a heart attack, we're going to die with coronary artery disease. We just don't want to die from it. Okay. So always have that in mind. And so screening is really, really key because we can make, at Longevity Health Institute, we make everybody feel better and we hit goals and we, make huge trajectory in people's lives and outcomes. But we don't want you dying on the treadmill. We don't want you dying, on a hike, okay, or out riding a bike. And especially men, because we're stoic and hard-headed and don't do good screening. So that's probably why I'm looking a little bit more, because here, if I'm going to give you energy, I surely don't want something happening negatively to you. Now, I often too get asked this, and so I did pull this. It's a little different. I pulled it from my book here on some of my background in the scientific stuff that I tend to look at and screen and write out, and that is stuff that's related to why we're getting higher rates of things, dementia and cognition issues. And one big thing in there, and I just wanted to reflect on a note there, is because I believe we're living in a more toxic environment. So I get this asked a lot is, why is there earlier cognitive decline? Why is there higher rates of Alzheimer's predicted and clinically we see? I mean, I can tell you even just in our practice. It's not 75, 85-year-olds. It could be 60-year-olds. And I actually know a few people that have passed actually in their late 50s from just Alzheimer's. I do believe we are, bathing in a soup of toxins. And that may sound horrible, but, if you follow me, and hopefully you do on social media, I just did a post here on Instagram and about this, and it's super powerful because it was studies. And it was republished, in the New York Times about how our environmental toxins are neurotoxins. There's something called PM 2.5, which is our particulate matter that is heavy around every city, every industrialized city. And this is showing huge issues with people with neurodegenerative disease. Well, as we become more industrialized and as we become more, pollutants in the world and, polycarbons and nitrites and environmental pollutants and arsenics and heavy metals and, all these things, as we inhale and we breathe these more, okay, if you don't detox, and you hear me talk about this all the time, and if you're overweight, then you hold the toxins more. And if you don't have a very good whole food Mediterranean, real life, real earth diet, which not many of us in America have, or very limited, okay, you are not servicing any of that stuff good to you, meaning these accumulant pollutants are going to jam up your brain. The other thing I actually believe, and there is more and more studies coming out about this, and I love a study that just was published in Nature, a very reputable journal, about how you can clear tau proteins and tangles, which influence Alzheimer's with a peptide, but how our blood-brain barrier is getting broken down earlier and earlier. So your blood-brain barrier is kind of like your cheesecloth or your filter to the world, to things in your body. And your blood-brain barrier, if things get through it that are toxins, they will create an inflammatory process, and they will lay down proteins and calcifications and influence micro circulation issues, so ischemic circulation in the brain, so tissue degradation. And the point here is all of a sudden your brain volume is getting lost, okay? Creating a better blood-brain barrier or having something that can remove toxins out of the brain, like I just mentioned, a peptide. There's a peptide TB500, actually has immune benefits too, but actually this is now being studied and shown literally just in a journal, Nature, that TB500 can remove tau proteins out of the brain. And yes, this is very early on, so meaning this is not, going to be at every drugstore or anything out in the public soon. We use TB500, that peptide, in our practice all the time because peptides are wonderful signalers in the body. But it's one of my point here is we're living in this soup of toxins where, we're not, if we're toxic, it's really just how toxic. So we have to appreciate that, test that. But that's not just for risks like cancer or gaining weight or liver issues in decades to come. So if you're going into your 6th, 7th, 8th decade, you have to think of yourself that way. So stop and think of yourself. One day, hopefully you'll be 70, 80, 90. We got to have a good brain. So that means we don't want toxins and we have to detoxify well. If there's one last thing that I want to stress, and that is you I empower you, all of you, especially men, because we just tend to be a little iller, a little sicker, and live a little bit less longer. But to pump the brakes and think of yourself as the long game. Short game is, let's work out today, this week, this month. Let's lose some weight. Let's eat a little better. Go get a checkup, etc. Think of yourself the long game. Your formative years, your studies show the last 10 years of your life aren't typically pretty if we're not careful. So you have to go into your 5th, 6th, 7th decade thinking of these systems like the 6-point model and optimizing these systems, creating metrics that you can track to improve so that you can bring true quality of health, okay, to your life, to your loved ones, and to others. And as my wife would say, to help still pay the bills. So anyway, well, thank you for joining me again here on the Deep Six podcast. This is another AMA. Join us again on another AMA, and we're going to have further guests coming up in the next few months. And if this is before or after, I wish you all a great holiday at the end of 2025 here. And remember to appreciate the 6-point model, address these from a functional physiologic standpoint. Longevity Health Institute and myself are here to really impact your life and guide you and put you on the roadmap of health. And reach out to us anytime. Follow us on social media. Share this with others and loved ones. Be well and do the right thing.